February 5th, 2003. The world's most powerful diplomat walks into the United Nations Security Council. Cameras flash. Translators adjust their headsets. He places a small glass vial on the podium. He holds it up. "This much," he says, "is enough to kill thousands." He says Iraq has biological weapons. He says Saddam Hussein can deploy them in 45 minutes. He shows diagrams of mobile laboratories on trucks. He presents satellite images. He speaks calmly, methodically, convincingly. Governments watch. Markets react. Allies hesitate. Weeks later, missiles fall on Baghdad. The Iraq War begins. But here's what almost nobody knew. The CIA never saw the weapons, never saw the labs, never saw the trucks. They never even met the man who claimed they existed. One Iraqi defector told a story. The CIA believed it. And that story helped justify a war that reshaped the Middle East. This is the true story of Rafid Ahmed Alwan al-Janabi, the man who sold the CIA a fake war. To understand Curveball, you have to understand Iraq in the 1990s. After the Gulf War, Iraq was crushed by sanctions. Inflation exploded. Infrastructure collapsed. Professional careers evaporated. An entire generation of educated Iraqis watched their futures dissolve. Rafid Ahmed Alwan al-Janabi was one of them. He studied chemical engineering at the University of Baghdad. Not a genius, not a prodigy, just intelligent enough to understand systems, and ambitious enough to want out. But Saddam's Iraq did not reward ambition unless it was loyal, and loyalty was not optional. The regime was paranoid. The intelligence services were everywhere. Defectors disappeared. Critics vanished. Opportunity did not exist unless you were connected. By the late 1990s, al-Janabi had no money, no power, and no real prospects. So in 1999, he fled. Germany became his destination. Not because he loved Germany, but because Germany offered asylum. He arrived as a refugee, alone, anonymous, irrelevant. Inside the refugee system, time slows down. You wait. You fill out forms. You repeat your story. You hope someone believes you. Unless you have something valuable. And al-Janabi noticed something important. Germany didn't just take refugees. Germany listened to defectors, especially Iraqi defectors, especially ones who claimed to know something about weapons. That's when the idea formed. In late 1999, al-Janabi contacted German intelligence, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, the BND. He claimed he had worked on a secret Iraqi biological weapons program. Not just any program. Mobile labs, laboratories mounted on trucks, production facilities on wheels. He said Iraq had learned from the 1990s inspections. Permanent facilities were too easy to find, too easy to bomb, so they made them mobile. He described fermenters, drying equipment, decontamination chambers. He sketched diagrams. He claimed he had overseen operations. He said he witnessed production of biological agents, anthrax, botulinum toxin. The BND listened, but they didn't celebrate, because almost immediately there were inconsistencies. His job title shifted between interviews. His timelines didn't match Iraqi industrial records. His descriptions lacked technical depth in certain areas. He exaggerated his rank. At times, he contradicted himself. Internal German memos described him as unstable, emotionally erratic, possibly fabricating. One officer wrote that he appeared to embellish under pressure. Another questioned whether he had ever worked in a weapons program at all. But here was the dilemma. If he was telling the truth, ignoring him would be catastrophic. And if he was lying, exposing that lie would take time. Time the Americans didn't think they had. So the Germans did something cautious. They did not fully endorse him, but they did not dismiss him either. They summarized his claims, and they passed those summaries to the CIA. They did not allow direct access. They did not provide raw transcripts, just filtered intelligence, second-hand reporting. And that subtle decision would change history. In 2000, the CIA already believed Iraq was hiding weapons. The assumption was not neutral. It was preloaded. Since the end of the Gulf War, inspectors had played cat and mouse with Iraqi officials. Sites were cleaned before inspections. Records were incomplete. Suspicion was constant. When 9/11 happened in 2001, suspicion became urgency. The United States had just experienced the worst attack in its history. Nearly 3,000 people dead. The intelligence community was accused of missing warning signs. The political pressure was immense. No one wanted to be the analyst who ignored a threat. No one wanted to be wrong again. So, when the BND sent summaries of an Iraqi defector describing mobile biological labs, it didn't sound crazy. It sounded plausible. And plausibility is powerful. The CIA requested to interview the source directly. Germany refused. They considered him unstable, too fragile, too unpredictable. The CIA pushed. The Germans hesitated. Eventually, the CIA accepted something astonishing. They would build part of their case on a source they had never met. They would rely on translations, on summaries, on interpretations. The most powerful intelligence agency on Earth outsourced its proof. And once that decision was made, inertia took over. After September 11th, the national mood shifted. The question was no longer, is Iraq a threat? The question was, what if it is? Mobile labs were the perfect nightmare. They explained why inspectors hadn't found anything. They explained why satellite images were inconclusive. They explained the absence of evidence. And when absence becomes evidence of concealment, you have a self-reinforcing loop. Inside classified briefings, language began to evolve. Early reports said, a source reports the possibility. Then, intelligence suggests. Then, Iraq possesses subtle shifts, but enormous consequences. Some analysts pushed back. They noted that the source had not been directly validated. They warned that the reporting was second-hand. They flagged inconsistencies. But the political current was strong. The White House was openly discussing regime change. Officials were asking intelligence agencies for clarity, certainty, decisiveness. Ambiguity was politically useless. Curveball's story offered clarity, and clarity is intoxicating. One by one, they believed. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened gradually. A briefing here, a memo there, a reference in a speech draft. Each time the mobile labs were mentioned, they gained legitimacy. Each time they were repeated, they hardened. Confirmation bias did the rest. Analysts began searching for satellite images that might support the narrative. Ambiguous truck convoys became suspicious. Industrial equipment became dual use. Everything started fitting. Because once you assume something exists, you start seeing it everywhere. And here's the most dangerous part. No one thought they were lying. They believed they were assembling intelligence. They believed they were protecting the country. Curveball didn't hack classified networks. He exploited something older: human pattern recognition, human fear, human desire for narrative closure. By late 2002, mobile biological labs were no longer speculation. They were treated as near fact, and the case for war needed facts. February 5, 2003. The United States makes its case before the world. Satellite imagery is shown. Audio intercepts are played. Diagrams of mobile labs are presented. Technical descriptions are delivered with confidence. The speech is precise, calm, authoritative. The phrase "mobile biological weapons laboratories" echoes through the chamber. Reporters write it down. Governments analyze it. The world hears it. What almost no one knows is this: those diagrams trace back to one source: a refugee in Germany, a man whose credibility had been questioned internally, a man the CIA never interviewed directly. But the speech works. Public opinion shifts. Allies join. And weeks later, war begins. March 20th, 2003. Missiles streak across Baghdad. Shock and awe. The assumption is simple: we will find the weapons. Quickly. Troops advance. Facilities are secured. Sites are searched. Nothing. Weeks pass. Nothing. Months pass. Still nothing. No mobile labs matching the diagrams. No stockpiles of anthrax. No active biological weapons program. Field commanders begin reporting discrepancies. Inspection teams find degraded equipment, old research, abandoned programs, but not the operational threat described. Inside Washington, tension rises, because if the weapons aren't found, the justification collapses. And if the justification collapses, everything collapses. By 2004, internal reviews begin. Investigators retrace the chain of intelligence. Where did the mobile lab claim originate? The answer keeps pointing to one source: Curveball. German intelligence files are re-examined, and what they reveal is uncomfortable. The BND had expressed concerns repeatedly. They described him as unreliable, inconsistent, prone to exaggeration. At one point, German officials warned that parts of his story were not credible. Those warnings were transmitted, but they were buried in larger assessments, lost in the rush, because the broader narrative needed him to be true. And here's the chilling reality. He wasn't some master manipulator orchestrating global deception. He told a story that matched what policymakers already feared. And fear amplifies alignment. Years later, al-Janabi gave interviews. He admitted he fabricated the story. Not under torture, not under threat, voluntarily. He said he wanted Saddam Hussein removed. He believed the regime was evil. He believed outside intervention was necessary. He understood one thing clearly. If America believed Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, it would invade. So he gave them weapons. On paper, in sketches, in testimony. He weaponized expectation. He mirrored the West's worst fears back at them. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for fame. He asked for asylum and regime change. He later said he was proud Saddam was gone. He expressed little regret, because in his mind, the outcome justified the lie. And that's what makes this story disturbing. He didn't accidentally mislead the CIA. He intentionally shaped a narrative, and the CIA embraced it. People often ask, how could the CIA be fooled? The answer isn't technological. It's psychological. The agency wasn't infiltrated. It wasn't breached. It wasn't outsmarted with code. It was pressured. Political urgency, public fear, post-9/11 trauma, confirmation bias. When a system wants an answer badly enough, it lowers the threshold for proof. Curveball didn't hack a firewall. He hacked belief. He exploited the gap between uncertainty and urgency. And once belief takes hold in a bureaucracy, it spreads. Reports cite reports. Briefings reference assessments. Speeches quote intelligence. And suddenly, a refugee's fabrication becomes global policy. The Iraq War lasted nearly a decade. Hundreds of thousands died. Millions were displaced. Regional instability fueled extremist groups. Trillions of dollars were spent. Global trust in American intelligence eroded, all traced in part to a chain of intelligence that began with one man, one story, one decision not to question deeply enough. Curveball did not act alone. Governments made choices. Officials signed orders. Generals deployed troops. But the mobile lab narrative was central. It solved the missing piece. It filled the uncertainty. And that was enough. Here's the part that should bother you. Curveball didn't need to be brilliant. He didn't need elite training. He didn't need insider access. He needed to understand something simple. Superpowers don't move on perfect proof. They move on sufficient proof, plausible proof, emotionally satisfying proof. When a narrative fits existing fears, it accelerates. And institutions are made of humans. Humans who fear being wrong. Humans who fear missing threats. Humans who respond to pressure. Curveball exploited a moment in history when fear outweighed skepticism. He understood the demand, and he supplied the product. That's not espionage. That's psychological arbitrage. Years after the invasion, when asked if he regretted lying, al-Janabi said he would do it again, because Saddam fell. He saw himself as a catalyst, not a villain. But history is not that simple. The war reshaped the Middle East. It destabilized entire regions. It altered global power balances. It fractured trust in intelligence institutions, all connected to a source that was never directly validated. A man in a refugee center, sketching trucks, telling a story, and watching the world believe it. He didn't break into the CIA. He didn't steal secrets. He didn't plant spyware. He did something far more powerful. He understood what the system wanted to hear, and he gave it to them. He proved something terrifying. When fear meets confirmation, belief can become policy, and policy can become war.